Hey, welcome to the Northeast Hunt and Film Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Alex. Here you'll find hunting stories and strategies based mainly out of the Northeast, but we'll also include hunts from all around the country. If you can hunt it and you can film it, chances are we're going to talk about it on here. Enjoy. All right, welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Northeast Hunt and Film Podcast. Today I'm joined by Brandon Langlois and Jeremy Ballantyne. Jeremy you've heard on here a couple times. This is Brandon's first guest appearance, his first podcast actually. I think he did pretty good. The reason I wanted to get those two on at the same time was they both shot their target bucks on the same day, just a few hours apart, and they're both like, upwards of 10 years old. Brandon thinks his is 10. Jeremy's not super sure, but the biologist at the check station pried open their mouths and looked at the teeth, and he's like, yeah, they're, just by looking at the teeth, just immediate guess, they're at least 6.5. So Brandon had a few years of history with his buck. Jeremy didn't have much history with his, but knew just from trail camera pictures and videos that it was a super old deer. Just had all the characteristics of an old deer, kind of going downhill. We get into some strategies about all-day sits and gear, stuff to bring to do that, because Brandon's like the master at all-day sits. He did 6 in a row on his vacation. He said he did a total of 12 this year, so that's something I want to work towards getting better at. It's something I definitely struggle with, and I have the capability of doing it. I've done it before. I did one this year, but it's just it's a mental hurdle, and he goes over the details of how, after the first 2-3 days is the hardest, and then it just becomes like routine, and the days actually go by pretty quickly. So we talk about that, and we talk about we get into Jeremy's buck that he shot. So this is Sunday. This is the day before I released this. This is Sunday the 19th. And Jeremy shot his final mass buck. He's tagged out in mass now. Yesterday, the 18th. It was a 2.5-year-old that he jumped it and running through the woods, and he had some openings, and he took a shot, and he thought afterwards, he's like, oh, I really didn't size that thing up, but that doesn't matter. It's all about the hunt, all about the situation. So we talk about that. We talk about Brandon shot a 144-inch buck with his bow in New Hampshire back in the beginning of October. Talk a little bit about that and just some other hunting stories. I'd like to bring you a deer story of my own, but the only story I got thus far is I shot a deer last day of muzzleloader in Vermont. Like, there was like a half an hour left of daylight, and I was walking through the woods. It was pretty loud. I'd been hunting all day. Me and my buddy Jake were hunting in the morning, and then he had to leave, so I just poked around, went to some old haunts, and just kind of checked the place out and reminisced on some old hunts I'd had, and got back to my truck a little early, and decided I was going to make one final swing, and just because I wanted to be out there till the end. If it's the last day of the season, you can't be calling it quits early. So I was gonna make one loop and across the road and go back to my truck. So I was walking through the woods and kind of heel toe, like, and I'd grunt, just trying to sound like a buck or a deer. Just trying to not sound like a big dumb human walking through the woods. I fooled this deer because I just saw the ass end of it, and it wasn't trying to run away. It wasn't, it legitimately thought I was another deer. I just kind of pulled up and shot, and the shot was back. Lost blood and never found it. I don't know if I hit it low or what, but just in the heat of the moment, I've been struggling so bad and want a deer so bad that I kind of let my better judgment get clouded by just wanting to get a deer. So learn from that, and yeah, but still grinding away. Still got some, probably 3 or 4 days left. I'm not calling it a season until 4:47 or whenever the legal time is on New Year's Eve when Mass ends. This will be the last podcast of 2021, so hope everybody has a good Christmas and New Year, and if you're still out grinding it away, good luck. Shoot straight, and we'll see you in 2022. All right, we're live. Another episode, Northeast Hunting Film. Sitting here and not really knowing what to do with myself. It's Sunday. We're not hunting.
Yeah, you can't hunt on Sundays in Mass.
New
Everything
Hampshire's
else is done.
Vermont's done. Got some snow last night. And here we sit.
Wait until Monday
Yeah.
when we're at work.
Yeah. I can't get any time off next week either. Well, maybe. I think we got Friday off.
Yeah, you should get Christmas off.
Yeah.
Killed some bucks on Christmas Day down there.
Christmas Eve. But I got a Santa suit too.
Yeah.
I got this vision in my head of like tracking a deer in a Santa suit.
It's the right colors.
On Christmas Day.
Right? I wonder if they'd give you crap for it being red, not orange.
Yeah.
No, I'd wear my orange over it.
Yeah.
But I'd make sure I was legal and everything, but just Santa suit, beard, and just have someone film it.
Yeah.
Just call it like Blitzen's Dead or something.
Yeah.
Rounding up the reindeer or something. Yeah.
Someone would be offended.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
But yeah, we're gonna talk some. These guys both killed their target mass bucks on the same day. What, a couple hours apart?
Yeah. Brandon shot his first thing, and then mine was at 9:00.
Yeah, that was opening day of shotgun.
Yeah, first day of gun season. Yeah.
But you using the Woodman, right?
Yeah. So I typically don't hunt shotgun that much, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to buy a shotgun for a couple of days. So I've been using that Patriot for the last 3 years, and that gun's just amazing. I've killed a pile of deer with that gun so far.
Yeah, it's a shooting machine.
Especially out of a stand or something. There's no disadvantage. It shoots phenomenal. Those guns are awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just carrying it and stuff. I mean, hiking up into those mountains with that gun, it's like, it's nothing. Mm-hmm. It's like a toy.
Yeah, it's like a stick.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if you have that peep on it. We all got scopes, but if you run that thing with a peep, it's really like carrying a stick.
Yeah, I could imagine.
I know Timmy's. We did the old switcheroo there. We were hunting in the White Mountains, didn't find a track all day, and we came across a smaller one. He's like, "Give me that camera. Take it." So we tracked it for a while, and eventually we had to get back to the truck because we were like 5 miles away. But I'm like, this thing is like, phenomenal,
super, slim. Yeah,
but I don't like the peeps. I can't. I ran one for a year, and I can't. It takes me too long to acquire a target through it. Although that Skinner sight, the one, I think they call it like Gen 2 or something. It's an even bigger ghost ring.
Yep.
That thing would make me buy a peep again.
Yeah. I'll have to try it out.
But mine was the Williams, and of course you take the aperture out or whatever, but still, I don't know, I didn't like it.
Yeah, they're pretty thin, so you really don't see that, even the outer ghost ring of it, you really don't see it very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to buy one. Take the Williams off that 35 Whalen and put it on.
Yep. I saw it with a peep with a fiber optic front sight.
That's
which is
what
what
I
the
put on
Woodman
mine.
What the Woodman comes with.
Yep.
If you get the peep. But yeah, that might help the target acquisition quicker.
Yeah, I noticed quite a bit of difference when I tried to get a fire sight front and couldn't, so I got kind of a knockoff brand. It's the only thing available, but it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean, you pull it up, and as long as your cheek hits where it needs to every time, it's like you don't even know the peeps there. It's just point and aim.
Yeah, I've got to try one. I've always shot a scope. I know a couple times it's helped me tracking deer having a little bit of magnification.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Like, my best Vermont buck I ever shot him with a muzzle loader, but I mean I shot him in his bed and he was covered in snow, and I just saw his antlers move, and I was trying to figure out what I was looking at, and I looked at him. I pulled the gun up, and then I could see his whole body was to the right. It's like if I didn't have magnification, I would have been trying to figure out what I was looking at.
Right.
You know, but with that scope, I was just like, oh, his whole body's right there to the right. Just shifted right over. Kaboom! I shot him right in his bed. I don't know what would have happened if I had iron sights.
Shoot him in the head.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that always made me a little leery about, open sights and peeps is
I just like that little bit of magnification, even
Yeah.
if it's only 2.
Yeah.
That's what I usually have my scope on. It's just 2. It just helps, just
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, the Leopold you put on your Woodman, I have one on a 7400, and I will only use that gun if it's good weather. But that's a really nice scope.
Yeah.
I've thought about putting that on that pump.
Yeah, I like it. It's got surprising good field of view too.
Oh,
for
definitely.
that little tiny 20 millimeter.
Yep. It even brings in pretty good light.
Yep.
I've sat with it and stuff, and you sit right up to end illegal, and you can still see fine with it.
I mean, for $200, that's a great piece of glass.
Yep.
But
Yeah, they make good stuff.
We'll start with Brandon's deer.
Yeah.
Tell us a story about that big 5.
history with it, and
Yeah.
That 6-pointer actually is what he ends up being. But
Yeah, so I've hunted Mass for 5 or 6 years now. Armin got me hunting down there, and I hunted with him for a couple of years and shot a couple of deer, and then started turkey hunting down there in 2019, and that's when I found really good sign up on this mountain that I turkey hunted, and said basically, I gotta come back in here in the summer, do some scouting. I mean, there was rubs, scrapes everywhere, and turkey hunting was terrible. So many people down there, a lot of pressure. But so I ended up going back in there in the summer of 2019 and hung a couple of cameras. It's kind of super fast. Found a little cut above a field that looked like, had some good sign in it and whatnot, and put the cameras up. I think I hung 3 cameras. Went back in August of that year to check them. I let them soak for probably 2 months, and I just was scrolling through the pictures, okay, good buck, and then saw this buck, and I'm like, holy crap, this thing's huge. It was just a big giant typical 8.
8-point frame then, right?
Yeah. He was had little brows, but huge frame, just perfectly symmetrical 8-point. And he was, on the camera quite a bit, but it was a lot of, dark pictures and stuff, and nighttime pictures, which is, a lot of times you get in daylight pictures during summertime, and it wasn't, like that with him. So I figured he probably was, living somewhere that, obviously I wasn't. So when does the season open down there? It's usually the second week.
Yeah,
or
it's
whatever,
usually around
October.
the middle of the month.
Yeah,
middle of the month, 18th, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so a little different than New Hampshire. New Hampshire's the 15th of September, which is nice because if you get on something, that's got a summer pattern
Right.
and stuff, you can kind of still go off that. This was different, for me starting in October. They kind of completely shift their pattern. So it was that year was...
You're starting right at the pre-rut.
Yeah. I didn't really know where to start that year. I didn't have a lot of experience on that mountain. So it was kind of that was the year I started, I think, hunting with a saddle. So basically I was like, well, I'm going to go in there and just scout my way in, hunt.
Yep.
And the first weekend, I think I went in there and I didn't see anything on that first Saturday. Of course, with Mass not being able to hunt Sundays, it's tough because, I work 5 days a week. I don't get to go down there. It's 2 hours from my house.
Yeah, you get quite a drive.
Yeah. One way is, it's 2 hours, some 4 hours of driving, and turkey hunting, after turkey hunting with you, I set up a whole kit, basically tent, everything to be able to stay.
Yeah, that's
down
the way
there.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, when we went to Maine, and saw the setup that you had, I'm like, yeah, this is what I got to do if I want to hunt, consistently down in Mass. And I did that a lot. turkey hunting and stuff. So I figured I'd do the same thing with deer hunting if it wasn't too cold and whatnot. But so yeah, that year, the second weekend I went down there, I set up a little bit higher, just kind of set up low in the morning and didn't see anything. So I kind of scouted my way up the mountain, found a really good wall crossing. There was a big scrape on it. So I'm like, well, this is kind of the direction it looks like he's kind of coming from a lot of times. So I'm like, well, we'll set up here. I set up that night, didn't see anything. And then I think it was probably about 10 minutes prior to dark, end of legal, I hear crash, 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 crash coming down the wall, but on the other side. And I mean, it sounded like two moose coming down through the woods. It was super loud. And then I could hear bark, 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 grunting the whole way. And it was a doe. And I didn't know it at the time, but there was a buck on her chasing. I didn't know it was him. And they stopped about 50 yards on the other side of the wall in front of me. And I could tell they weren't coming my way. They were going to go right past me.
Yeah.
So I grabbed my grunt tube, let out a grunt, and you could just hear him just start thrashing trees. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And she started walking. He started walking with her. So I snort wheezed at him. And as soon as I did, I could just kind of see with my binoculars the silhouette. Still couldn't see the rack. And all of a sudden, I could see his body swing around and just kind of bristle up a little bit. And he just instantly snort wheezed at me.
Yeah.
And I never heard a deer in New England do that. I've heard them out in the Midwest quite a bit, but not here.
Those older age class deer hate when you snort wheeze at them, man. They can trip their trigger wicked.
Yeah, and it was a weird sound too. It was almost like a not that normal sound of snort wheeze. It was just strange.
Yeah.
And he started coming right towards the wall, and I'm looking at my watch, and I'm like, man, I got 8 minutes left of end of legal shooting. You better make it happen. It's all hemlock on the other side. And he gets into the hemlock, and I can see him now. I can see his rack. And this is the biggest New England deer that I've ever seen in person, at this time. And I'm just shaking. Usually I'm pretty, I'm just cool, calm, and collect up to the shot. And then after that, you start getting the jitters and stuff. But man, seeing that deer and seeing that rack, I was just like, oh my God, this is going to happen. He ended up coming to the wall, and 35 yards, getting really dark, no clean shot, can't see limbs. And I'm just literally watching my watch click down on time, and he wouldn't come across it. He just held up right there, and all of a sudden I could hear the doe start making some noise, and I'm like, he's going to leave. And sure enough, she turned around to get out of there, and he just turned his head, looked, flipped around, and headed out.
Yep.
I mean, if shotgun season, muzzleloader season, he would have been dead in 2019.
Absolutely.
But because it was a bow, there was just no shot opportunity whatsoever. So he literally just walked out of my life that day. And
I remember you texting me that night,
yeah,
telling me about the deer.
Yeah, and and I had to stay. I ended up staying in that tree for 45 minutes after they walked out, because the way they walked was a direction that I did have to go to get to my truck, and it was a lot further. Not knowing the area, I was parked a lot further away than what I do now and stuff, knowing the mountain like the back of my hand. And so I'm I'm going to give them time, and I'm going to circle way up and around the mountain. And did that, never saw a deer going out. And I remember, getting out to the truck and texting a few buddies. And, I actually, texted my good buddy Armand, and I'm like, I got to call you. And I called him, told him the whole story. And he was just like, well, that's pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, but it is super disappointing. But it was good to know that, I went in there, kind of figured out what he was doing. It was a luck thing. He was on a doe early, but I got eyes on him, which was cool.
Yeah.
So, to that day, I was like, all right, this is the deer I want. This deer's, an awesome deer. There was a bunch of other deer that were good, but he was the one that I, really wanted to go after. Never saw him again that year. As soon as shotguns started, he completely disappeared off all my cameras. Gone, literally that next week.
That area get a lot of
a lot of hunting
orange
pressure.
army.
Yeah, I mean, you can really get deep into those mountains, but those guys down there, especially the locals and stuff, they're not afraid to walk, and you get into groups that are, pushing and stuff like that, so it gets a lot of pressure.
He's probably been disappearing to wherever he goes every year.
Yeah.
He's got a solid game plan.
Yeah. He goes, well, here comes the white people.
Yeah. And I learned that over the couple of 3 years of chasing him, that I either had to kill him during bow season, or I really needed to figure out where he went, in that off season. And I couldn't get him on camera anytime after that, even up to, the end of January. He'd showed back up around August. So in 2020, put my cameras out. I do more scouting down there, figure out the mountain a little bit more. Still, not great, but definitely learned a lot more of his range and stuff. But couldn't figure out exactly where he went in that late season. So I hunted down there that whole season, and I was hunting out towards the eastern part of the state quite a bit, and wasn't putting as much attention there as I should have in the beginning of November. And that's when things were really hot, and I should have been down there because, it's a long drive, so I wasn't checking trail cameras to see what was going on.
Right.
And I got sick of hunting pressure and stuff out towards the east, and I said, I'm going back to that area, back to the mountains. I can't stand hunting around people.
Yep.
I just like to get away from everybody. Same thing in New Hampshire. And get over there and check a couple cameras. It was the second week of November, because I had shot my New Hampshire buck with a muzzleloader and was hunting basically strictly mass for the rest of my vacation time. And I checked cameras, and he was on there a couple of times daylight, and there was a bunch of other good bucks on there, and I'm like, okay. So I, basically just focused on mass for pretty much the rest of that season. Never saw him. Same thing. Once you got into shotgun season, ghosted, completely gone. Never got a picture of him. And he did something a little bit different, where he actually came back down off the mountain. We had some weird snow. I don't know if you remember, we had that pretty big snowstorm.
The first day of shotgun, we got like 2 feet that one year.
Yeah.
It was like right up to my pockets when I started walking into the woods in some places.
Yeah.
It was like 3 feet deep drifts.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was hunting around the side of the mountain where I knew he kind of summered, and a lot of the deer kind of congregated over there during deep snow because it had good southerly points. So I started hunting over there quite a bit, but it was getting a lot of pressure. And the area around the side of the mountain that I didn't hunt, that I typically hunted on, it was kind of getting less pressure for some reason. And so it pushed all the deer over to that area last year towards the end of the season into muzzleloader. And I actually tracked 4 or 5 bucks around the whole side of the mountain, right at the tail end of that snowstorm that we had gotten, and figured out where they had funneled through and stuff. And I had one more day to be able to get back in there before the end of the season to hunt just before Christmas. And I'm like, I'm going up this brook, gonna sit in this brook crossing, and you telling me all the intel on sitting brooks and using brooks to travel up them.
Best way to enter a mountain stand, I think.
Absolutely. And and that basically was, my game plan was to hike up in there early with my climber, get set up on that crossing that I tracked those 4 bucks through the weekend before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got up there, and that's when I ended up shooting that Browless 6 last year.
Yep.
Chased a doe up through, and him and a spike came through, a few minutes later, and shot him. And I was like, that last day, I don't care. I wasn't holding out just specifically for that buck. It was my final tag in mass, and I didn't have any other time.
Yep.
So shot him, and then I went down, pulled my cameras in February, mid-February or so, once the snow dropped down a little bit. And this buck and 4 other bucks were in that area chasing one doe in the middle of January. I mean, they were like on her hard.
Late one.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, that was the latest I've ever seen something like that happen. All of them still had antlers. It's right at that beginning to mid-January time frame, and I had those cameras on video, so it was super cool. I was seeing them fighting, chasing her back and forth. I caught him on camera, coming down through grunting at other deer, and stuff like that. So he did come down off that, off the mountain for that time frame. And who knows, I think the year prior I probably pulled my cameras early, so maybe he always came down off the mountain once gun season stopped.
Yeah.
And then was headed to wherever he wintered. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, I really gotta figure this deer out. I'm gonna put some serious effort into it. And one of the turning points for figuring that deer out was before I shot that Browless 6, I was really high up on the mountain. I was doing a lot of still hunting when we didn't have snow. And I found this bench up there, and same thing, I used the brook to go up about 1.25 miles, just about to the top. It was right on that like 2/3, crest, which you see it down in that
it's like
area.
the magic part of the mountain.
Yeah. You hear these guys talk about that 2/3 line.
Yeah, upper third.
Yeah, and you see that down there, but in New Hampshire you don't see it quite as much because you got more or less mountains, peak mountains, versus ridges that run long distance. So you don't have that when you get that wind coming over the backside. You don't have that wind tunnel that happens on that upper third. Down there you did. So when I found a really big signpost rub up there, and right next to it was a real thick laurel bedding area. And I sneaked into there, and you could tell. I mean, it was just real good doe bedding. And that signpost was just off from that. It literally 80 yards, and there was a little rise. So I knew that, like, okay, this is where I needed to be. If I'm going to kill him, I think it's going to have to be up here. That's obviously his rub. I mean, the rub was bigger than my thigh. And you could tell where his antlers wrapped around the backside, and you can tell where his antlers were actually, rubbing the backside of the tree, even though the front was his main section. You could see his tine marks. So I knew that, it was him, that he hit that probably more than any other deer around there. So I ended up going in this year, and from March to May, I put over 100 miles on that mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what it's all about, spring scouting, man.
Yeah, I mean, I really, put the boots to the ground this year, and it was a little bit of my Achilles heel, I guess, because I ended up herniating a disc in my back in March, and a lot of it was because of, prior injuries and stuff, my back being a little messed up, but a lot of it was because of the amount of miles I put in that mountain, trying to, 1, find his sheds, and 2, scout him and figure out where he went, during that shotgun muzzleloader season.
Yep.
So I couldn't find where he was wintering. I looked everywhere. A lot of the bucks in that area, just, like we talked, they completely ghost and go, miles to winter on a,
south-facing. And he may be in a tiny little area. Like wherever he was wintering, he may not be leaving an area the size of a football field. So it's super easy to walk by. And if the sheds are laying right next to each other, it's real easy to walk by the sheds. You could have walked through where he wintered, just didn't find his antlers. Yeah, and loses them in some laurel or something. Yeah, it's hard to find them.
And I was even thinking, he may even go down real low behind a house. Maybe somebody feeds him. Who knows? Yeah. But I found a few good sheds in there and stuff, but I could not find his sheds. A couple other bucks that I was after, just couldn't find them. But I had a ton of intel on him and other deer, and so that all that scouting really, helped me out huge with being able to kind of figure this deer out. And he was weird this year. It was a weird year as it was, but he never showed up until a couple days before the season. I always had him on camera during summertime and, through early fall, and never once, not one picture. I thought he was dead. I knew he was an real old deer, and I figured he probably just didn't make the winter. And a couple days before the season, all of a sudden, boom! I run a bunch of cell cams and stuff, and a few regular cams down there. Makes it a little easier when you're 2 miles, or 2 hours away and stuff.
Yeah, cell cams are clutch for those spots.
Yeah, they and that area is tough because reception is really spotty. So I was getting weird pictures, weird times. It wasn't always like, boom, you get a picture and then it sends out to you. Like sometimes I get a boatload of pictures like a day later.
Yeah, the service is terrible down there.
Yeah. Just off. So whatever, it just helped me not having to constantly go down and, check cameras and stuff, which made it nice. But
and you're staying out of the area.
Yeah. I only went down.
And he clearly doesn't like pressure.
Exactly. And I think I only went down there a handful of times, a lot in the spring. I wasn't worried about, bumping into him, but actually during the summertime, I went down there to set cameras, went back in on the 4th of July to set a few rut stands in these areas that I knew were hot previous year. And
yep.
The one thing that I've noticed with big woods and, in these bucks is getting intel from years prior, has helped me tremendously with killing deer. And it's how I killed my deer last year with a muzzleloader in New Hampshire. I had 4 or 5 years of experience in that area, seeing pictures, figuring out when deer travel. You can kind of see when the does come in to heat when you're running these cameras in certain travel corridors, saddles, stuff like that. So you really get a in tune on when you really need to go down there and focus your time in certain spots. And he ended up showing up, so I'm like, okay, awesome, game on. He's back. And I got down there a couple of times during bow season, but it was odd, where I wasn't getting a lot of pictures. Like, Jeremy and I talked with the acorns and stuff were super spotty. It just wasn't a normal year. The 2 years prior was pretty consistent. This year was like completely different. And I'm thinking like, this is going to be tough,
yep.
With not, only having those 2 years. Now this year is completely different than what it was before. They weren't hanging out down low where I typically would bow hunt. It's a little bit harder to bow hunt up high, especially when you're running and gunning, you're, bringing your system in and stuff. So I set those rut stands because I knew those spots were going to be good. And I set a stand up at that signpost next to that bedding for that deer. And I knew if I was going to kill him, it was going to be up at that stand. And I went in there just before Halloween. I sat low in the morning and then went high in the evening up into that stand. I knew that, I could catch him coming down off the top of the mountain, coming down and, down low, checking does. And that's when I found out about, that area having, with the leeward wind coming over the backside with that wind tunnel. Because when I got in there, I was like, oh, I got I think it was a perfect northwest wind, and figuring the wind was going to kind of come down off my shoulder and blow down towards behind me. I got up there and the wind was kind of doing that, and then I'm sitting there and all of a sudden the wind's blowing straight up the hill. Yeah. And then it blows down the hill, it blows right, it blows left. I'm like, what is going on right now? And that's what it was. I had kind of a predominant west-northwest wind, and it would hit the back of that ridge and roll up over the top and then just sit there and just
washing machine type thing.
Yeah. And I had never...
Like the snow in the bed of your truck when it does that.
Yeah. Yep. That's a tricky spot to try to...
And I never really saw that, and I don't know if I boogered him that night or not. I know he was close, but I never saw a deer that night. I probably should have just got down, kind of knowing what I know now. But I'm thinking I'm way up on this mountain. I got an hour left. I'm just going to stick it out in case something comes off to the side. And it just nothing happened that night. It was dead. So I came down off the mountain. I'm like, I'm not going back up there until I have thermals in my advantage. Yep. Not going up on a windy day because you're not going to be able to sit it. I kind of figured mornings were going to be my ticket, because if they're down low, I can kind of come up and, like we had talked, using what's really helped me out when you taught me about using brooks to access these deep spots. And that was key. And that's one of the reasons I set that stand up there thinking I was going to kill that deer, was because there was a brook nearby. And I could literally follow that brook and be in it tight. And you know how those mountains are down there. I mean, it's steep. And that brook was gouged out, so it wasn't just
you're out of sight, out of mind, and it covers all your sound getting up there.
Yep.
If you just marched up that side hill in crunchy leaves, deer can hear you from a long ways away. You're in that brook hole, all your sound seems to be contained right in there. And it's like you're just walking up like a stairway, you know, and it's
the first time I did that, you know, and I kind of like, you know, I like to pre-plan my routes and stuff, even if I have to, you know, move stuff out of the way so I'm not stepping on stuff, blowdowns and stuff like that. I'll even do that. But, you know, I pre-planned that route when I set that stand, and I ran it a couple of times to figure out, you know, what I can get away with and stuff. And I mean, there's oak all over that mountain, so you know the deer are going to be real close as you're going up that mountain, and, you know, you don't want to bump anything. But using that brook, like you said, it, you know, it got rid of my sound for the most part, and I could stay down low in the brook. So even if there were deer 50 yards off to the edge, a lot of times they wouldn't even see me. And if they can't hear me, they can't see me, I can walk right by them in dark, and they'd never even know I was there. So I figured that was going to be super important with getting up there and sitting that. So first day of shotgun came, and I got that deer on camera lower a couple of times just prior to shotgun, and he was running daylight. So I'm thinking, like, this is my best chance, you know, right here. So game plan was, you know, I left the house at like 2:30, 3 o'clock that morning, headed down there. I got down there super early. It's over an hour hike to get up there, kind of take my time. I was still even kind of running a little late, ran into a ton of black ice around Brattleboro. And I started hiking up the mountain, and I get all the way up there, and I had planned to, because the bedding area was so close, I figured if any of the deer were in that bedding area, I didn't want to have to get my stuff together at the base of the tree. So what I had planned is the bench below that, I would stop at the brook, and I'm, you know, packing in, I'm sitting all day. You know, that's what I do. I did 12 all day sits this year.
Yeah, that's my head explodes thinking about that.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's tough, but
that is the hardest, easiest thing to do in the world, because all you really got to do is sit there.
Exactly.
It's just mentally.
It's
mentally the hardest thing on the planet.
You got to be confident in your scouting, and you just got to, you know.
Yeah, and that, you know, that's
you
key.
might as well be trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. That's how mentally challenging that.
And, you know, and you'll have, when you start doing that, your first 2 days, 3 days are terrible. I mean, it's like withdrawals. You know, you're just sitting there like, is this going to work? What am I doing? I should be moving around. I've got a gun in my hand.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough.
I haven't checked that camera in a couple
Doesn't
weeks.
take long for doubt to sink in. You start trying to talk yourself out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when I hunted New Hampshire, those 2 weeks I had off, I mean, I hunted after 3 specific bucks, and I wasn't going to shoot anything else. I passed up 7 deer in those 2 weeks. And, you know, that's what it is. But you got to have confidence in your spot. You got to know that spot is worth it, and that, you know, you can make it work there. And if you have that, the first 2 days are rough, you know, sitting there all day. But I'm telling you, after that, it's just like you're going through the motions. It's so easy to do after that. It gets easier and easier and easier as you go. As long as you can keep your mental strength up, you know, that even if you're not seeing deer, you know, it's going to work out. Because you'll go 2 or 3 days and not even see a deer. And then all of a sudden a deer funnel through that area, and boom, you'll see all kinds of deer that one day. It's like, gives you a little pickup, and you're good to go for a few more days. So I planned on sitting there all day, thinking that, 1, he's going to funnel through there looking for does. It's his spot. And 2, I'm going to have gun hunters coming in. I know I'm going to have pressure. So if he's down low, he's going to know to get out of there. And, they may push him up the mountain. I may see him even through that. So I get to that lower bench. I take all my stuff off. I go in really light. A lot of times it's super light pants. I pack in bibs, pack in a heavy coat, lunch, all that stuff. I use rubber boots. I use hiking boots. A lot of it's because of my ankle, but it's super lightweight. They're waterproof. Your feet aren't sweating to death.
Mm-hmm.
And if your feet sweat, you're not going to sit all day because you're going to get cold. You cannot have wet feet and sit all day long.
No doubt.
So those hiking boots, those crispy boots have been really, really key for me for hiking into these areas where you're, going from a mile and a half, 2-3 miles sometimes. And I carry in Arctic Shield booties with me, so if it gets, super cold, I can just throw those on, a couple of hand warmers in them, and I'm good to go all day long. Yeah. So I donned all my stuff, put my bibs on, put my harness on, took my stick off my backpack. I usually don't keep a bottom stick there because I don't want people climbing up my stand. And basically I wanted to be able to creep up over the bank and throw the stick on the tree, hook my gun up, and just climb. I didn't want to have to make any noise, or anything and spook deer. And when I clicked my headlamp off, I could, because of the snow and stuff, I could see pretty well. It was probably 15-20 minutes before, legal light. And I said, okay, perfect. I can creep up over this bank, get to my stand and climb. And I get up there and I'm kind of rushing around to organize stuff because I am running a little behind. I'd rather be in a tree, half hour, 45 minutes before legal instead of like right at legal.
Yep.
And I get all my stuff kind of organized. I actually hadn't even put my coat on yet. I, had my vest on and gun hung up. And I look and I can hear kind of crunch, 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 crunch coming from the bedding area, kind of slabbing the hill. And I'm like, holy crap, deer already. Look down at my watch and I was like dreading looking down, thinking that, it may not be legal time to be able to shoot this deer, whatever it is, if it's a buck. Look down and it was literally 2 minutes into legal. And I'm like, perfect. And I watch a deer walk up over the little knoll coming from that bedding. Could see a good body, could start to see the rat coming through. I'm like, okay, it's a good buck. And I grab my gun, swing my gun, and get him in the scope. And I just see that big giant fork. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, it's him. Like, this is going to happen.
Yeah, that's cool.
And he comes down, and I mean, literally bow range. I could have, if I had a bow, I could have easily killed him with a bow. He was headed right for that. Whether he was going to hit that rub or not, he was headed right for that rub.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, like, up there high, you're in a lot of hardwood. There's a lot of whips, beach whips and stuff. So you really got to be careful trying to, get a bullet through some of that stuff. I picked an opening in front of him, and he was motoring right along pretty good, just in that, like, zombie walk.
Yep.
And he hits that opening, and I'm thinking as soon as he hits that opening, I don't usually stop them, if they're close. You got a gun, you can just get it on their shoulder as soon as they hit that crosshair and just, pull the trigger. And it was so weird because he gets to that opening, and his shoulder comes into my crosshair, and he stops. I'm like, I haven't seen you stop since I first heard you coming.
Yeah.
Like, and you stop in the biggest opening that I have.
Perfect.
Like, what are you doing? And it was like he stops, kind of looks down my way, almost like he could sense that, I was there. Who knows?
The end was near.
Yeah, I don't know. It was super weird, but he just stops, looks my way, and, I kind of hesitated for a second, and boom, pull the trigger.
Yep.
And of course, you can see there's not a lot of smoke with that 209, and you can see everything. See him buck, he takes off, and he literally goes just up past that big signpost rub, and there's a little ledge there, and he starts to kind of climb it, and he just like gets down, almost down on all fours, like he can't go any further, lets out a huge grunt, like moan, and just flips over backwards.
Awesome.
And I'm like thinking, oh my God. And I just shot, the deer that I've been after for 3 years now. I just, at the time, I was like, what the heck just happened? And, a little bit I texted Jeremy and texted and a couple other buddies, and I'm like, the Mass Giant's down. And I got the same reaction from everybody. Like, I didn't hear anything from Jeremy for a few minutes. My other buddy was like, really? Already? Like, we're like 5 minutes into the opening day of shotgun season.
I was just getting into my stand when I felt the phone vibrate in my pocket.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll check it once I get my stuff all together. And I got all together and the gun hung up, and I looked at the phone. And I'm just like, Brandon's buck's dead already. What do you mean already? It's like, because where I was, it was thick spruce. I couldn't see very good. It was still really dark in there, even though there was a little bit of snow on the ground.
Yeah, with the
It's like,
snow.
oh yeah, it's been legal shooting life for like 10 minutes now. By the time I get the text, I'm like, oh, good job.
Yeah, with the with the snow and being up high up on the mountain.
Yeah, you had hardwood too.
Yeah, all hardwood. The
Yeah.
east is right to my back, so that's that horizon and stuff is lighting up. It's just lighting the whole side of that hill up. So I could see clear as I could see no problem to shoot bow, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
But I didn't really care. Bow, gun, didn't matter what I killed him with. Just chase.
Yeah, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Well, the deer's pushing double-digit age, probably.
Yeah,
so
that
it's really cool to kill a deer you got that much history with too.
Yeah, the first year I had him, I kind of figured he was probably in that 5.5, 6.5 range, maybe even older. You could just kind of tell he had some real age on him, and even sending him to some pictures to you and Brett Joy. He's really good at judging age and stuff on deer, and he was the same way. It's like, dude, that's an old deer, and
got the sway back going, pot belly hanging down.
Yeah. And he was, for that area, you don't typically get a lot of 200-pound deer. They're kind of a smaller bodied deer, like New York style deer a lot of times. So that seems like 150 to 180 is like the normal range for those deer out there.
Absolutely.
And he was always like early season looked like a 200-pound deer. So it's like he was special.
Yeah.
He was not not the typical buck out in that area.
Well, they rut down big time in those mountains.
Yeah.
Running that steep stuff, they lose 20, 30 pounds, it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
But especially by that time, after Thanksgiving and everything, after the ruts, post-rut, those deer have lost a ton of weight.
Yeah, the last picture I had of him was about a week prior or so to shooting him, and I mean you could tell that he was down to skin and bone. Yeah. He he may not have even made it through the winter this year, just being as old as he is. I'm guessing he's right up around that 9-10 year mark as far as age goes, but we'll send the teeth out. See, who knows, may even, be surprised he may even be older, you never know.
Oh, that's the cool part. Yeah.
He's definitely an old warrior on that mountain, and as much pressure as that place gets, he was headed out of Dodge, and we talked about that.
Yeah. That was your one. If you hadn't killed him that one day, it would have been, you'd have had to have gone and find him wherever his sanctuary was.
Yeah. And he was headed
out of there as soon as the gun started.
He was headed up into some territory that I have dabbled in a lot this spring. And and I shake my head like,
big woods.
How am I going to get in here? How's it even possible? You're talking 3-4 miles, of rugged country, thick, nasty.
Mountain laurel, tons of security cover.
Yeah. And that's how he survived. Yeah. He didn't get shot during bow season. He almost did. Yeah. But he made it through, and he knew to get out of there during gun season and not come back, and and that's how he lived down there as long as he did, which is a testament to a deer like that, because I get a lot of deer down there that are 3-4 years old, and you're thinking, oh, it's going to be a good deer next year, and you never see them again. Yeah. They get killed. It's just the area. I've heard from a few other people that I've run into the last couple of years. One guy that I've become pretty good friends with, had him and his dad hunt down there in that area, and he was telling me stories about that area being like crazy, like seeing deer like that all the time down there 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah. And now it's just not like that. It's makes it a little bit rougher, but deer are deer like that are down there. You just got to work at it.
They're just getting harder to find. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, you got to work hard to find them. I mean,
I almost look for the habitat first, and then go try to find a big buck like that. Like, try to find, where's there a mountain that's miserable, with a lot of mountain laurel and good security cover, where one can get that old, because if they don't have they need that security cover, and they need big woods. If they don't have those two elements, it's like they can't get the age on them. Yep. They get killed during gun season, or it's a miracle for them to get 4. Yep. If they
And him being, you said he was pretty scarred up, and you can see he's got a broken beam, so he was a fighter, and a lot of times those fighters don't.
The aggressive deer usually don't live long.
They check out at 3 because they come into the first guy blowing a grunt call.
Yeah. Yep.
And but that just proves that
the cover
it was an unpressured area for all bow season pretty much, and then gun hunters might have pushed him off, but he figured it out.
Yeah, he just had something figured out the other ones didn't, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing to watch that and to see that, all these other deer, run around down low on the mountain, they all get killed and shot
right.
up and stuff, and you get one deer like that just knows. And I don't know if it's, I've heard of, being that they learn it with their doe, who knows.
Or he got a haircut when he was a spike horn.
Yeah, he had a couple near death experiences, and it hit home.
Yeah,
he learned from it,
Yeah, exactly. And, I've learned now over, of course, with social media and stuff and him being all over the place, I've learned of 2 or 3 other guys that have gotten pictures of this deer, knew about the deer, all this stuff. So there was people after him, Well,
also, you think about how many big bucks. You were saying the mountain used to have a lot more big bucks in it. Well, also, trail cameras have helped us find these deer.
Yeah, no doubt.
That normally these deer would be ghosts. Like, it helps us find deer that are this big.
Yep.
And then we can kind of concentrate on them. The cameras don't necessarily tell us, exactly where to sit at the right time, but they let us find them, and that alone lets you know that deer exists on that mountain.
Yeah, definitely. And that, cameras are definitely a big part of my game. And, you get some people that, that don't like the cameras, and I understand that, but it's, a lot of us, we don't use the cameras to, we got to go sit here. I tried that when I was younger, and it makes it worse.
I just need to know he's alive.
Yeah.
And then I rely on my scouting after that to go kill him. I just want to find a deer of that caliber to hunt.
Yep.
That's it. Makes it a lot easier to sit double-digit days in a row if there's one out there like that.
Yep.
Rather than there's a lot of rubs, so there's some bucks in here. I don't really know what, but
well, also, let's say you're hunting a big deer that's got as much character as, when they get old like that, they got really unique set of antlers.
Yeah.
You hear of someone shooting a really big buck. Oh, what did it look like? Oh, my deer's still alive, or my deer's dead.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than, like, I remember before trail cameras, I'd be hunting a big buck, and you hear of someone shooting a big buck 3 miles away. I don't know if I'm going back in there and hunting a ghost.
Yeah.
I don't know if that deer's even. Am I wasting my time trying to find that deer? It's like, how with a camera, I know what the deer looks like that I'm hunting, anyways. So I at least know, him getting killed 4 or 5 miles away is totally possible. So it's nice to know what he looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
You could have sheds and stuff like that, but it's nice to know if he's. I just want to know he's still alive.
Yes.
Yeah, and when you're hunting, hunting this kind of conditions, these big woods and stuff, these deer, they don't stay in the same areas. So
no,
they're making big, giant loops. I mean, I've tracked deer in these areas for 10 miles.
Yeah.
So that's a long ways. And, all it does is just kind of solidifies that the deer is still in the area. He's, like you said, he's not dead.
Yeah.
And then you gotta forget the cameras. They miss so much. You cannot hunt off those cameras. I've tried it when I was younger, made things worse. You just gotta kind of forget those cameras are there and go in and just rely on your homework, all your scouting.
Just take it for what it is, just an inventory. And there's a giant running around on the mountain.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, how many times have you tracked a buck past your camera and he goes
on the other side,
3 feet to the right of it?
Absolutely. Or you walk in with snow on the ground and see how many deer have gone on the other side of your camera.
Yep.
There's not even a trail there. It's like, it's just they're just a tool to have at your disposal, but they allow us to find those deer that would remain a mystery.
Yep.
Other than that,
Yeah, exactly. So it was a good day, for sure. And and I remember, when you were like, "Oh, I'll get down, I'll come out, help you."
Yeah.
I wanted and I knew I was going to run into a lot of people coming down off that mountain. I almost just wanted to wait until dark and then drag him down off that mountain, but being the first week of shotgun, you got to check them in and stuff like that. And that's why I was like, nope, just stay in your tree.
Yeah, I was pumped for you. I'd killed a buck in Vermont that 2 days before that, so I was just like, I'll come help you. I know how much history you got with that deer. It's cool, I was hunting a really good deer at the time, but it was like, I didn't have as much history with him as you got with this one. So
Yeah,
I was just pumped to see him.
Yeah, I'm glad that it worked out the way it did because.
Oh, absolutely! I'm glad I stayed in the stand.
Yeah, and I stayed in the stand even after the shot, and I stayed there for about 15, 20 minutes, and and I'm sitting there, and he's behind some trees, and I can see his ass end, and then I can see like his nose, but I can't see his rack, and I'm like, I know that it's him, but I want I want to make sure that it is. And so I was like, well, Mass, you can shoot 2 deer, without having to tag the first one in. So, and I had a second tag, but I'm like, nope, can't do it. I got to get down and see this deer. I got to put my hands on him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I creeped down, grabbed my tag and all that stuff so I could get him tagged in, grabbed a couple of things so I could, take some pictures and get up to him. I just remember walking up to him and just seeing that, that rack just sticking up out of the snow. And
it's awesome, dude.
The rack compared to the body and stuff, was just super cool. And, he's tall, he's wide. And I'm like, oh my God, it's him. Walk up, get hands on him. And, just kind of like, I'm literally like 10 feet from that signpost. It's right there next to me. And I'm just like looking at it. And I remember I took a picture with my woodman. There's probably a lot of people have seen that picture. It's, just big, giant rub up there on that hardwood bench.
Yep.
And I posted it a couple different times. Well, that was the signpost that I shot him off from.
Came full circle.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And I even I kind of dragged him a few feet down to that signpost and propped him up, grabbed my gun, took another picture with the gun there and the deer laying there, so it's just kind of cool, finding that bench and that signpost was big, and that's all in scouting, just putting your time in. You gotta scout about 3 times the amount that you're gonna hunt.
Oh, easy.
And that's the biggest part. People ask all the time, like, oh, you must be hunting a lot. And yeah, I hunt a lot, but you don't even want to know how much time I put in during the off season.
There's a ton of preseason prep that people just, that's the difference. That's the difference, is the amount of time that we put in scouting before that. And I can't stress enough spring scouting, like the amount that you can learn about a mountain.
Absolutely.
By walking it in the spring. It's crazy.
You see everything. Everything's laid out like a map.
Yeah.
And every rub, every scrape is so easy to see. I use Onyx, started using a new program, that Spartan Forge.
Oh, you're using that?
Yeah. I still have Onyx, but I did switch to using that program as well, and I'm liking it. It's got a lot of good features and stuff. The digital imagery's a little better, and it's supposed to get even better. Where with like Google Earth, you can I don't know if you've ever used it or not, but it's got a scale on it where you can kind of slide the scale back and forth to see different times a year. And when they take that digital imagery, it may be leaf on or it may be leaf off, so you can see that.
A winter photo is super valuable sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what's really important, is to be able to see leaf on. If it's fall time, you can see all your oak, every single pocket of oak that's on a mountain. Like you can save so much time by looking at it in digital imagery, as long as you can see that. And then you can switch over to leaf off wintertime, and you can see every transition line there is. And you can just kind of put the pieces together, like, here's transition line. They're going to use this. They're not going to work through a wide open piece of hardwood unless there's a certain terrain feature or whatever there. And you can kind of just piece puzzles together of transition lines to oaks to transition line to oak, stuff like that. You can see bedding areas, your thick, conifer trees and stuff like that.
When contour relates to cover, that's usually the two you need.
And that was the ticket to that spot was there was mountain laurel and hemlock off on the, and it was a point. It was a real steep point with ledges in the front.
Yeah.
It was a perfect little spot for them to bed. And then that bench kind of came down into some hardwood, and they would either hit the brook and funnel down over the hill down the mountain, or he'd slab across the side of the mountain. And the way everything was kind of laid out, there was a lot of ledges up high, so he had to go certain routes. So that spot where that signpost was like the hub of getting to different points on that mountain. So I knew as soon as I saw it, as soon as I opened up the map, started looking at the contour lines, looking at transition lines, I knew that this was going to be it. Like
the light bulb came on.
Yeah, like this was the spot, that these deer were going to be crisscrossing and intersecting through and whatnot. So yeah, super important. Scouting, I can't say how important it is, to killing deer like that.
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody can get lucky once in a while and stuff, but
but to kill them consistently.
Yeah, it's a lot of sacrifice too, especially if you got family and kids and stuff like that. I mean, you definitely got to sacrifice some time, and you got to have a supportive family to do that stuff. Wife and all that stuff. My wife is amazing as far as that goes, with allowing me to do that and not pressuring me to be home and and stuff. So that definitely helps a lot too. Hunting is my life basically. It's what everything I do evolves around is deer hunting.
Yeah.
It's there's not a minute that goes by that I'm not thinking about deer.
My wife's as obsessed with horses as I am with hunting, so that works out pretty good.
Yeah.
She doesn't give me any grief for hunting. I don't give her any grief about being at the barn 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So
exactly.
It works out pretty good.
Everybody's got their thing, and you gotta
everyone's gotta have some sort of thing that drives them in life like that. You gotta have a passion. So
yeah, I mean, this is no different than sports and racing and and all that stuff. We like to eat deer meat and all that stuff, and we don't ever buy any meat from the store. Everything that we eat is what I end up shooting, but it's not what it's not all about that.
It's everything balled up in one. Yeah. It's all one big,
the challenge,
all the scouting, preseason prep.
Yeah.
Everything all comes full circle, and it's who we are.
Yeah.
We're just
I mean, you have to have something that challenges yourself and makes you better, and and stuff. So doing, I used to race motocross, told you that, you'd always kind of, try to make yourself better. Firefighter, EMT, so I'm always taking classes and, learning different stuff. And it's no different with deer hunting. I've listened to thousands of podcasts, never figured I'd be on one, but,
Conned you into it.
Yeah. You're always learning. You have to be always learning and evolving. If you're not learning and going forward, then you're moving backwards. There's no such thing as just staying stagnant.
I relate hunting to moto a lot, because there's a lot of say the race is the hunt. Well, there's a lot of work that goes in.
Absolutely.
Bike work and off the bike training and practice and all of that goes into the actual gate drop. Well, that's scouting.
Yep. Running
trail cameras and spending 2 hours a night doing this. Big little, trying to figure out maps.
Oh, yeah, my wife wants to kill me sometimes with, always on my phone. She's like, "Why are you always on your phone?" It's like,
I'm looking
at maps. I'm looking at trail cameras. I'm looking at deer. I'm thinking of deer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It is.
It's
even
similar.
The physical aspect of it, you got to be in shape if you want to race motocross, and if you want to, hike mountains and kill, deer like this, you got to be in, reasonable shape. I mean, I'm, especially this year, by no means in the greatest shape, with what I dealt with physical wise, but you do have to, be able to endure that kind of stuff. I mean, you can't be completely drenched by the time you get up to the mountain.
No, you can't.
Out of breath. And
you're not going to last an all-day sit.
No. And, so.
And you got to be determined to do that hike as many times as is necessary, too. It's you're hiking into that stand in the dark and coming out in the dark. It's to be able to get up and do that on different mountains 4 or 5, 6, 7 days in a row if you can. It gets to be harder and harder to do it, but you got to know what you got, the carrot dangling on the end of the string. You know what the prize is. So
when I told you, going
stick with it,
going up that mountain that day, and I told you I was swearing at myself and everything else. It was super noisy, crunchy going up through there, and I'm like, I'm gonna blow every deer out of here. This is dumb. Blah blah blah. I'm never gonna see anything. Running
all
late.
been there.
If you were just going up the side of the mountain and it was open side hill, it would be totally different.
Yeah,
but when you can use those brook holes, and the lay of the land will help kind of hide some of your sound, and then you're low, you're out of sight, out of mind. It's entrance and exit to the stand is probably as important as the stand site itself.
Yeah, I can't agree enough.
You can screw it up. You can have the best stand site in the world, but if you can't get there without spooking every deer on the mountain or walking where the deer have to walk, and it's not worth sitting there. You're gonna mess it up. You gotta and you gotta plan your entrance in the daylight. Make sure you don't want surprises in the dark.
Yep.
So you got I map it out right on my Onyx, my walk-in trail.
Yep.
And then and it's usually as low impact as possible.
Yeah, you almost have to know every footstep that you're going to make, all that stuff. Because, I mean, even, going up that brook, I knew when I got up to the, 200 yards prior to my stand, the right side of the brook gets traveled. And I have a camera down on that next bench down 200-300 yards down. And I knew that it got traveled up from my stand down to that on the right side. So I knew as soon as I got to that, I needed to cross over, get on the left side of the brook. Yep. So any deer coming up from behind me up the mountain that morning, they weren't going to hit my foot traffic and smell it. Because, I mean, I've had that. Bucks will literally hit your boot track, and it doesn't matter what you wear, rubber boot, leather boot. It does not matter. They know that you're there. They know something's broke ground, and then it's not a deer. Yeah. And you can't expect to walk across the trail and and then see a deer come up through behind you most of the time. So I knew I had to cross across there, and everything was just all strategic.
All those details add up to success. And if you take out one or two of them, you never know how it would have played out.
Yep. But it all worked out.
But it was cool to get that text from you and then kill that buck at 9:00.
Yeah, I'm glad you stayed in the stand.
I got that text from you, and then I was like, well, I'm going to stay in my stand. If you need a hand, let me know. And then 8:00, I was just like, I just had a doe come by, and she had her tail up the entire time. Came right out of the bedding area, and it was a thick finger ridge, and it was really good security cover, that whole finger. But it was a real steep bank, and then they did a clear cut right up to that steep bank, and it was like a 70-yard swath. So I'm sitting there, and the deer kind of had to go through that 70-yard swath, and I put that stand right in the middle of it. And it was just a good morning for movement. That doe came through, definitely could tell there was something harassing her. And about an hour later, I see movement back there again. And here comes a deer walking out of it. And I could tell immediately it was that old 5-point that I was trying to kill. And they had real white face, real white legs. And his rack was so wide, I couldn't even see it on his head when he was looking at me. They were, it was out past his ears, and he turned sideways. I'm like, it's him. And I had the gun, and I got all turned around. I shot him at 40 yards, and he piled up. And it was just, there was another buck behind him, and I never even looked at that deer once I saw that it was that big 5. Yeah. I still to this day wonder, there were 2 other really good bucks in there, and I still don't know what that deer was that was behind him. And the only thing I can think of is those 2 bucks were in there fighting over that doe, or they were harassing her or whatever, because she was a full hour ahead of them, and then they were coming down through, and they were downwind of where she walked. They weren't exactly on her tracks. I think they were trying to just pick her back up again, and I don't know. The 5 was in the lead, and that was the one I wanted to shoot. But it was, that deer is super old too, but I just don't have a lot of history with him. He showed up in that spot. I was trying to kill there was a really big typical 10 in there. I was trying to kill that deer all bow season. And this deer showed up November 10th. It was the first day I saw him. And once he showed up, he was daylight on a bunch of cameras. And I was basically just chasing my tail, trying to figure out how to kill him in there. I was never in the right spot at the right time. And he had that deer survived because of security cover. That piece of woods was all thick spruce, just gnarly, nasty, steep brook holes, and that's what you need for them deer to survive. Yeah. If you have a big hardwood ridge that doesn't have any character to it, and those deer just aren't going to get age to them.
And the big ones don't like being there anyway.
No, they're all nighttime. You may get a picture of a monster in those areas, but it'd be middle of the night. He's in there harassing some does, but he's out of there. If he stays there, he's dead. And it's just
that's a lot of times when you get in pictures of, a big deer and it's night. I tell people all the time that, oh, I got this deer. It's a huge deer, but it's always night. I'm like, you're not where he feels comfortable living.
Yeah, he's around there. Now you just got to figure out where's I tell people first off, I'm like, where's the best cover? within 4 or 5 miles of there.
Yep.
Find the nastiest, thickest, steeps. Where's the spot you do not want to walk?
Yep.
Or where do you think least amount of people go? That's probably where that deer's coming from. You know, it may be down low, it may be a swamp, but it may be up high, it may be on a side hill that's all mountain laurel, ledge, steep. That's the number one factor, I think, is cover. It's just and they got a different spot they go once the guns start blazing, you know. Who knows what would have happened in that piece of woods, you know, after that first day. Both of our bucks could have disappeared.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
I know mine would have.
And
I would have had to go deep.
And for that deer to be 9 o'clock in the morning on his feet, you know, it was because I was in that thick cover. I couldn't shoot beyond 40 yards where I was. It was really thick, you know, so it was just a really good piece of security cover. I knew he was going to walk through. And that all came down to last minute scouting because I was trying to figure out where that deer was, and it was a Sunday and I couldn't hunt. I went in there, we had that skiff of snow, and walked around in there and kept walking in there, and I found where he'd gone through that sliver of woods, and there were fresh rubs in there, bark right on top of the leaves. I was like, man, that buck he's in here right now. And I put the stand in there intentionally for that deer, and that was my first sit in it, and I killed him. But sometimes it works out like that. Sometimes you end up, you know, and I end up chasing him for years, you know. And I was fortunate enough to kill him that first sit. But
well, I'm gonna start telling you every time now when you're gonna kill a buck, because I know I can sense this, you know, from you now. Every time when you're like, I'm gonna go in and kill this deer, or I'm gonna go and hunt this. Same thing with your Vermont buck you tracked. I'm like, he's gonna kill a deer today.
It was ideal. That Vermont buck this year was just ideal conditions.
I wish I could have found a track that day.
It was you can't ask for
but small ones.
You couldn't ask for better conditions. I mean, I was fully intent on hunting by my house here. Yeah. And I woke up in the morning and I could still see the color of my grass through the snow, and I was like, no, I'm gonna head to higher elevation. I got a spot, real big woods, national forest. And I get up there, and there's 9-10 inches of snow.
Yeah, it was deep.
And windy, like 25, 30 mile per hour wind.
Yep.
And, I mean, that was quite the story. I mean, cut his track with my truck crossing the road, and it was kind of snowed in, but, man, you could see by the stride and the straddle that he had. I mean, it looked like a guy with cross-country skis going down through the woods. You could tell it was a wide-chested buck. And he kept going to beaver slough after beaver slough, and he'd get in there and he'd start digging ferns. And when he was digging ferns, all you'd see was antler marks in the snow. And usually when they're doing that, they're bedding like right there.
Yeah.
Like he just dropped down off the mountain. He got down into this low elevation out of the wind in by these beaver ponds. He's bedded right here on one of these sides. And I'd slow right down, just creeping on his track. And pretty soon he'd leave that beaver slough, get into some wide open hardwoods, and just chug for another mile. And I'm just like, you bastard. Mm-hmm. So I'd lose a lot of time, but I'm like, I haven't jumped him yet. So he's not going to go far. It's post-rut. And he'd get to another beaver slough, same thing, start ferning around the edges of it. And I'd be just doing the death creep, you know. And he got into the third one, and I was still going really slow on his track, and I could see he stopped digging ferns, and he just took a drastic 90-degree turn to his left. And there was a little bit of a high spot there on my left. I'm like, I bet he was bedded right. He just all of a sudden stopped feeding and just took a drastic turn. I'm like, he's already got me.
Yep.
And I walked up there, and there's his bed. He bedded on the other side of a blowdown, and with like a foot of snow. I bet I could have only seen 2 inches of his back anyways. He like dug right down to the ground, and he had a nest right in there. You could see where he bounded out of it. And the wind is howling. I'm just like, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I got no reason to hurry. So I stood there for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and that was dressed really light for tracking. So you stand there until you start to freeze.
Mm-hmm. That was a cool day too.
It was cold. It was 20 degrees and windy. Yeah. You know, so I was just like, I'll stand here until I get really cold. That'll be about 30 minutes, you know, and I'm looking at my cell phone. I'm like, all right, I'll give him 25, 30. And that was the best decision. That's what killed that deer, was waiting that 30 minutes, let him go calm down. I mean, at that point, I was 2 miles from the truck at line of sight. So I'm like, this deer's out in the middle of nowhere. He's going to totally relax if I just give him a little bit of time. Followed his track. He didn't go a quarter mile. He stopped running. He went through a little patch of hardwoods, got onto a little knob, and just stopped there. And you could just see his tracks. He had that whole area just matted right down.
He was standing there looking for you.
He was standing there looking for me to come up on that track. And when he didn't see me coming on that track, you could see where he turned around, walked a little bit, and just went right back to ferning, digging ferns, and just steps were real close together. I'm just like, when I saw that, it was just like a big grin ear to ear. I was just like, this deer's dead. Because I knew I was going to catch up to him on his feet. He was still browsing. He wasn't going 20 feet, and he was digging ferns up again.
Yep.
And I didn't follow him a half mile, and I caught a glimpse of him just feeding out of sight over a little knoll. And I could see he was kind of cutting to the left, so I got right off of his track and slabbed around to the left, and there he is, right down it was kind of a mix of hardwoods and balsam. And he was eating mushrooms off of a white birch log, and was able to get some log, trees in between me and him, and I was able to creep up there and bang, got a shot into him, and he took off and chased, ended up hitting a branch or something. I hit him a little far back and ended up chasing him down into a swamp and jumped him and finished him. But just a great day to track deer.
Yeah, that's
you get that real windy and deep powder like that, you can almost you can just get away with so much. It's so much fun, and that's the most exciting way to kill a buck is tracking them.
I couldn't buy a track. I saw a bunch of deer tracks, but I don't like following those.
Yeah, it's
those average tracks, because as soon as you get into other deer,
you can't stay with them, especially in that powdery snow.
Yeah.
If it's really wet snow, you can see the track super good. But
I did that when I was first starting to do it, just because, you listen to everybody, well, just follow a deer track. Well, every deer track looks like that. It's like, well, which one's this? And you circle and
you end up tracking 5 different deer in one day. Yeah.
And it just gets frustrating. So I just walk by those now. That the next step up, the ones where, they got a little bit of stagger and stride and stuff.
They've got to be different. They've got to have I like bucks that have a one toe shorter than the other. You'll see that quite a bit.
Well, and like you were, saying when I was talking to you about that, because that day for me was awful. Got on that deer, and that deer just absolutely
Your deer wanted to cover ground.
7 miles. Didn't scrape, didn't rub. Didn't get into does, went through 4 swamps. I mean, that deer just about killed me.
Those are the deer. Usually that's usually like a November 15th type deer. Like I hate tracking deer during the rut.
Yeah, because it's awful.
You can you'll see them. You learn a lot about stand placement for rut stands by tracking deer during the rut, because they will take you through every hot saddle.
Absolutely.
You'll see them use every pinch point, and you can just mark it on your map and keep that in the Rolodex for later. But you can track deer all day and never catch up to them, never jump them, never have a chance of killing them. But post-rut, what I like about post-rut is you can even find a buck track that's a day old, and you can still, if he's a big buck, follow him right in there, because you're going to follow him in there. He's not going far. You can freshen that. You can follow it in there and freshen it up. There's his fresh track right there. They're in recovery mode. They're muzzleloader season, late rifle. They're in recovery mode. They're just worried about food and bed. And a lot of times those deer in that national forest where I'm tracking them in Vermont, they're off by themselves. That buck, there was no other deer around there.
Those are the best.
Crazy.
There was no deer. When I'm driving out that road, there's this one spot. That's the second buck that I've killed from that crossing. And usually it's like I drove for 2 miles on that road, and there was not another deer crossing that road. And all of a sudden I get to that crossing, boom, there's a buck track. It seems like post-rut, those bucks settle right in by that swamp. There'll be one in there. And if there's a buck in there, he's not going far, and he's feeding and bedding right by those swamps, and it's just a good scenario. Post-rut is where it's at for tracking. It can be exciting during the rut if you get on one that has a doe, because then the doe's not going all that far. She's exhausted because those deer are dead. If you got a buck that's with a hot doe, he's done. If you got any type of snow conditions, he's not paying attention to what's going on.
Yep.
And a lot of times you'll see that doe, and then you can get all ready, and the buck's bedded off to the side, or he's just standing there staring at the doe. It's just, they can be pretty doe dumb during the rut, but
He's thinking with the wrong head.
Absolutely. But catching one with a doe, he's only with her for 72 hours at most, you know.
Yep.
It's like, you know, it's a matter of, you know, it's hard enough to get the snow conditions, let alone catch one with a hot doe. The timing has to be right. But
Cutting their track when they're looking for a doe or a group of does.
oh man, you can follow that deer. If it's roaded up and you can drive around and keep cutting his track off, then it's nice. But big blocks of timber
Out in that country.
I've heard nightmares like up in the Adirondacks. I gotta go kill an Adirondack buck, but those big chunks of woods like that, you know, you're tracking a buck for 6-7 miles in one direction. It's like, okay, I got to decide what I'm doing.
And then that's a 6-7 mile walk out because there's no
it's
easier way.
Just huge chunks of wilderness. You know,
that's about the only place left that, well, not at least in the Northeast, that you could. You know, if you didn't know navigation, you could legitimately get lost.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a couple buddies that hunt up there, and it's really cool.
There's no getting lost in Maine.
You're gonna hit a log road of some sort or some sort of
those
walk
guys
into Canada or something.
Those guys that hunt there, there's probably not 2 miles of unbroken woods left.
Yeah.
It might be an old logging road, but it's something.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Oh, up in Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just been hammered. Northern New Hampshire. You could track a buck all the way across Northern New Hampshire.
Yeah.
You know. But.
Yeah, it's just catching them at that right time. In Mass, it's kind of tough tracking deer.
It's a lot of deer.
Well, there's too many deer in a lot of those spots, and a lot of times those big bucks aren't huge bodied. Like some of them are. I've seen deer down there that I've gotten pictures of that were in that 140, 150 inch range of antlers, and the deer gets killed in shotgun season. He's 150, 160 pounds. He's got little tiny feet on him. It's like, yeah, there are some huge bodied bucks down there, but they're the exception rather than the rule. You know, some of those huge antlered deer are tiny bodied.
Yep.
They can be 150, 160 pounds,
and even their bone structure is just all around just smaller.
They're just built for hiking those steep mountains. You know, big, huge, bulky bodied buck is burning so many calories down there.
Longer toes, but I mean, if you go off like you normally would up in New Hampshire or Maine, you're never gonna find that.
Yeah, they're just a different type of whitetail.
Virginia Slims.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mountain runners. You know, it's steep down there. Oh, man, yeah, it was a good year. It was a really weird rut, but the post rut ended up working out pretty good. So,
I'd say there's a lot of bone laying around.
Yeah, yeah, I can't wait to get that 5-point aged. He's hardly got any teeth on his lower jaw. It's like 1/8 of an inch, you know.
Yeah, it's so funny. They're both bucks you guys were after. They're both 5 points.
And they're probably
it's more or less.
It's probably the oldest buck I've ever killed. Is that one that I got? I just wish I had more history with him. I only hunted him this one.
Probably the oldest buck you've ever killed.
Yeah.
Same day, a couple hours apart.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just one of those, magical mornings, really.
So when I shot mine, it was like,
I was at work.
Texted Brandon. He's just like, we got to get together and get pictures. I'm like, yeah, you don't get two bucks. You don't get two bucks together like this very often. So yeah,
that's definitely going to be the thumbnail for this one.
We definitely got to get those two deer together. Yeah, and they were both scarred up.
How far away were you two from each other?
I would say probably 6-7 miles, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I shot mine.
Same mountain range, or
no, totally different mountain range. Because he texted me, he's like, I think I just heard you shoot. When you shot, I'm like, no, you definitely didn't. I'm quite a ways away, but it was an awesome morning, man. Just to shoot two beautiful bucks like that.
So I want to back up because this is still something I struggle with. I know you did 12 days in a row or whatever. So what is your because I got the Arctic Shield boots too with the hand warmers. I found that works slick. Same thing. I don't wear my rubber boots when I stand hunt. But what's your like go through you guys' like system, like for food, water, everything? Like what's your all day sit look like? Start with Brandon.
So typically I run a Badland Super Day Pack. Gets a little tight when you start doing all day sits and stuff like that, when you're bringing in heavy clothes, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. But I'll typically bring in an Nalgene bottle. I usually always have like some sort of caffeine in it.
Yeah.
Like Mountain Ops Ignite or whatever. Just kind of keeps you wired up, and keeps you kind of sharp, keeps you hydrated. You really, that's one of the big things. You have to stay hydrated. And then I kind of bring in bare minimum as far as food. I'll bring in something for breakfast that's just light and easy to carry. Usually bring in a sandwich. If it's cold and I'm sitting all day, sometimes I'll bring in a thermos of soup. I have a real small, compact thermos, and that really helps quite a bit. Cracking that open at noontime, having something nice and hot, like you get to that noon time frame and you're like, okay, I'm good to go for the rest of the afternoon.
If it's only another 4 hours.
Yeah.
Ish.
If it's not super cold out, then I'll bring a sandwich or something like that. I usually bring some venison jerky, and I don't know if the deer like that or not, but and then just like maybe some nuts or something like that, almonds or whatever, just easy snacks. And then for boots, I run Crispy boots. I have 2 different pairs now. I have one pair that's a 200 gram. Usually use those throughout the entire season, from January to, December almost. If I'm hiking, your feet never get cold. They don't sweat in them. They breathe incredibly well. Your feet will not get cold in them if they're not soaked. So that's where it's really important. And for me, with my ankle injury, a fused ankle and stuff, I have to have that support. I used to wear rubber boots all the time, and I can't walk that kind of distance in something without support. So those boots are pretty important. Always a merino sock. I started using a polypropylene liner for them. That helps out quite a bit, because if you do have any little bit of sweat, that kind of soaks up. It's almost like a base layer, basically, underneath the merino. So I'll wear those. That's pretty much good for feet. As far as like base layers, most of the stuff I wear is anywhere between Sitka and Badlands. I've been using Sitka for quite a few years, and it's super expensive, but man, you buy the clothes and you have it for 8 years, 10 years.
Buy once, cry once.
Yeah, they don't wear out, and I can't stress enough as far as like base layers and stuff like that. I like merino wool, but if I'm tracking, it's 100% wool, merino base layers, all that stuff, still hunting. But if I'm stand hunting, it's like a polypropylene blend of a base layer, which is what Sitka has. You can have it soaked, and then by the time you get to your stand, you just, you climb your stand, you'll leave your coat and all that stuff open, and in 15 minutes, you're completely dry. The stuff just dries super fast. So, if you sit in your stand, you're wet, and then you start covering up, that's when you're not going to be able to withstand that whole day. So those are super important. I usually pack in all my, my outer layers and stuff like that. So I'm going in super light. I'm either hiking in with a base layer or, maybe a thin pant or something over the base layer, and just basically, bare bones, just thin as I can get, shirt on top. And sometimes, depending on how warm it is outside, I'll bring in an extra shirt in a bag, Ziploc bag. I'll take that off 200 yards from my stand, whatever, 100 yards, stuff it in the Ziploc, and I'll actually hide it under a log or a rock or something and just pick it up on my way back. So I basically get to my stand with a completely fresh shirt. Because, yeah, they dry fast, but you're still going to get a little stink, to you when you're that sweated up. And, it happens. You can't get away from it, when you're talking it's 30, 40 degrees outside. When you're hiking, mile and a half, 2-3 miles into a mountain, you're going to get sweated up. So, and then just my outer layers, I usually wear a bib. I'll put all that stuff on at the base of my tree or prior to the tree. I kind of started doing that this year, where, if you're close to bedding and stuff, or you're close to where deer are, I'll actually put a lot of that stuff on, 100, 200 yards before the tree instead of actually at the tree. And that way I can just kind of sneak into the tree and just climb,
Yep.
And be ready. and heavier coats during cold weather and stuff like that. You started wearing that gear. I got you on that. And
yeah, I got that Sitka this year. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I've got a pair of bibs and jacket before, but it was really bulky for trying to shoot a bow.
Yeah.
It was I've had it for a while, and it's good for gun hunting, but it's not. The Sitka blocks the wind a lot better. I can't say enough. That stuff's awesome.
Yeah, and that's like key, like, having something with wind blocker in it, and it's not good for if you want to still hunt or if you want to track. It's crap, to be honest with you.
No, it's meant for sitting in a stand.
Yeah.
Sitting still. Yeah.
That's what it is. I will not wear.
Well, it's called Sitka.
Yeah, exactly. I won't wear that stuff if I'm moving around. And it does make it a little difficult, because if you want to get into a stand and sit until midday and then you want to get down and do some still hunting, it's a little bit tougher, because the stuff's just not made,
for moving.
To move around. You're going to sweat like crazy.
Yeah, you can't do both. You can't.
No, but this stuff, as far as all day sits, I mean, you will not be more comfortable in anything else. I'm convinced in it. I've used so much clothing over the years, and going to this stuff, and a lot of the stuff that Badlands has and stuff, they have some good stuff as well. I use all their rain gear and and whatnot. And, it's that high quality gear is pretty important when it comes to being able to sit all day and do it comfortably. And
it's an initial cost, and then you have it forever. It's like. It's not.
I've never worn.
It takes punishment a lot better than the cheaper clothing too.
It does. The only thing I've ever worn out that Sitka made was a set of base layers that was merino, and that's going to happen with any merino. It doesn't matter what it is. It's not as strong. As far as anything else that they make, I've never once worn it out. I've never sent anything back to be repaired, and I've been using it now for 7 years. So,
yep.
It's definitely a testament to their product and stuff. It's good, but I mean, yeah, you don't need to have it. But the way I hunt, I do. I need to have it if I want to keep going in day after day. Sit in New Hampshire this year. I sat 6 straight days, all day, dark to dark. And if your mindset starts going downhill, which it does, you'll have these times, you're sitting there and you're just like, what am I doing? And you got to be able to have a strong mindset to be able to go back in every single day. And if you're comfortable, being able to sit there is a lot easier.
You got to be confident that you sat there one whole day. That's just one day closer to killing him.
Yep.
Well, he didn't come through today. If I sit here 3 or 4 days in a row, I've got a really good chance of killing him.
Yep.
It's just, you just got to be confidence is the key with anything.
Yeah, and and that kind of mentality, unless you're going to be a still hunter and a tracker, which I wish I was, but I'm not, with physical limitations and stuff, it makes it a lot more difficult for me. I love that style of hunting, but I'm just not, I'm not proficient at it, so I have to figure out a way that I'm going to be proficient myself, not, taking Jeremy's style or taking your style of hunting. I
wouldn't take mine.
I have to make my own style of hunting. That's what I've done over the last couple of years, and all these guys that I'm really close friends with that are, absolute big buck killers in New England. Yeah, the guy sitting right across from me. I've learned from all these guys, and I've taken little bits and pieces of what they do and then made my own system.
Everybody's got something to offer. Like that's why these podcasts are so cool, because you can listen to someone else, how they hunt and everything, and you're just like, what, that, they may think of an idea of doing something that you haven't thought of, and you can try it and see if it works for you, and you can grab bits and pieces from everybody. And
absolutely,
everybody's got to develop their own system that works for them.
As I tell everybody that, a couple guys that will text me or whatever, and, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you do? And I always tell them, well, this is what I do, but don't do what I do, learn,
or try it and see if it works for you. But this is what I've learned from a
multitude of people. Don't try to take one guy's style and, make it fit you, because they may not be hunting the same type of areas. There's so many variables when it comes to, that thing. You got to figure it out on your own.
And I got different, you can change your style as to what kind of habitat you're hunting too. Yep. If it's an easy walk in, I'm going to be carrying different gear in than if it's a long walk in.
Absolutely.
And if you're tracking still hunting, you're taking totally different, you're dressed totally different. The whole mind frame. The mind frame is totally different. I mean, still hunting, you may not even have much of a pack. I just got like a little fanny pack when I'm covering ground. Minimalist, dressed really light.
My still hunting and tracking is the same setup. I still tape my boots.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what
if you're walking, it's similar, but
it's almost annoying to a point because you're like, okay, I'm gonna sit this day, but this day is a good day to still hunt and track.
Absolutely.
And literally got to go home and dump everything and switch your system.
I
over.
duplicate stuff. I have everything set up for when I'm tracking. I got my fanny pack. I got the only thing that goes from pack to pack is my hunting license. Other than that, I've got my pack all set up for tracking. I've got the gun all set. The gloves that I'm going to wear, the boots, everything's slick. All right there. So when it's tracking, everything's right there. When I'm stand hunting, I got the pack with everything in it that I need right there. So I just hop back and forth with packs, and that helps keep me organized. Because I never know. Like I could be hunting Massachusetts during Vermont gun season. I'm down there bow hunting, and then all of a sudden, boom, we got tracking snow. I'm going to go hunt Vermont, and I'm going to track because it may be the only day I get tracking. Yep. So it's just quick, grab everything and go. But my system's pretty similar to yours with Mass. If I'm walking in a long ways, I'm bringing dry socks and dry under, for a shirt, I'll wear just a regular, a regular thin shirt to walk in, but that thin shirt's coming off. And I'm changing my socks probably 150 yards before the stand. Because that's I get really cold. My feet will get cold. So if you have dry socks on, man, you can sit there forever. Yeah. But that's your extremities are the thing you got to take care of. You got to be dry. So
you'll notice those new boots, the more you wear them, you're going to love them.
I've been hiking in with like regular Crispies. So I have the ankle support to hike in there, and then I'll have my rubber boots on my pack or whatever, and I put everything on 150 yards from the stand. Yeah. Dry socks, the whole 9 yards. And it's the way to do it. You got to hike in and just get everything, because it's such a long ways in there. There's no way to do it without getting sweated up.
No.
I mean,
with me, even if it's a short way, my back sweats
especially when you got a pack
all
on
the time.
Yeah. So when I leave the truck, I want to be, my teeth are chattering when I leave the truck. It'll be like end of November, 20 degrees, and I'm wearing just a thin long sleeve shirt when I leave the truck.
If I do that, could be 0. I swear, 100 yards in, my back's sweating.
Yeah.
I just
people
run
sweat
hot.
A lot more. Yeah.
And then I freeze. I'm glad I discovered those Arctic Shields. I heard about those on a podcast because I couldn't figure the feet thing out.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way you can sit all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, before I bought the new set of Crispies that I have, I bought the new Wild Rock Pluses, which have 800 grams in them, which make a big difference. I mean, I can sit down into the teens with them without even touching Arctic Shields. Yeah. Which is awesome. And your feet will not sweat going in, as well. So, but before I sat, all December with those 200 gram Crispies, and I mean, you get down into the 20s and then your feet are going to start getting a little cold, and you throw those Arctic Shields on, throw a couple hand warmers in each one. I mean, they just rejuvenate your foot. Your feet are back to feeling as comfortable as can be, and you literally just will sit all day long, and they'll just almost like a sauna. They'll almost start sweating a little bit.
That's the number one thing I think that gets people out of the stand is they start getting cold, and it's pretty easy to talk yourself out of it once you get cold.
Yep.
But it's just staying dry, and you gotta plan on taking all those base layers off when you hike in, and then I put on all merino wool. I like wool for a base layer.
Yep.
But I wear a really light pair of Kuiu pants walking in, and they got a zipper that goes all the way down the leg, so I can have those open on the sides, so I have real good ventilation, and it's real good breathable pants. So I can wear my merino bottoms and have my pants pretty much zipped all the way down the leg, so I don't get overheated there. But I definitely put on new socks. That's the key. Put everything in a gallon Ziploc, zip it up. Either stuff it under a rock, like you said, or stuff it in the very bottom of the pack.
Yep.
It's the only way to go.
Yeah, it's not easy by any means, and you have to have a good system. You're carrying in a lot of weight and and stuff with all that on your back. So, a good backpack and stuff helps big time. I'm going to switch this year probably to a little bit more of a pack frame style backpack that I can kind of use it different ways. It'll help quite a bit with carrying the load. So, the backpacks that don't have a frame in them, they can be a little bit more rough.
You can put more weight on your hips, if you're carrying in more stuff.
Yeah. That's super important because, you don't want to be completely gassed and exhausted and you're, everything hurting by the time you get in there because you're doing that day after day and, you're just not going to be able to endure it. So.
And it's totally different from the end of October to the end of November.
Oh, everything changes.
You just get so much more clothing you got to bring when it starts dipping down into the 20s and below.
Yeah, and that's where I really like rut stands because you're not having to carry in that setup with you.
Those are the only preset that I do for rut stands. Yeah.
Same with me, and everything else is just run and gun. Jumping from tree to tree, early season, but that's really difficult to do late season when you're carrying in all that weight. You're talking about carrying in 50 pounds, late season with all your clothing, food, water, and then a, saddle or stand on top of that.
Then you're sitting there all day and then you're taking that stand down at the end of the day and then hiking that all the way out of there. It's not, man.
No, it's not fun.
It's a lot to do. So I'd rather hike 2 or 3 stands up on that mountain and have them hung in August.
Yep.
Or whenever you can get in there, springtime, whenever.
And that's what I did, down there with him. I
you can either hang them or stash them somewhere. So at least so they're up there.
Yeah. I brought 3 stands up on that mountain and I had to do it 2 different days.
Yeah.
Because there was no way of carrying 3 stands and sets of sticks.
Absolutely.
And everything like that, one day. So
it's a lot of work.
Me and the dog put in 2 full days of hiking the mountain down there, setting rut stands for this year.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did it in the summer too.
Yeah, 4th of July was the first day I went down to do it, and I had all intentions of going back down to the truck, grabbing the 3rd set, and going all the way up to the top of the mountain. And I was swapping out a camera, putting a cell cam in its place. It was super wet, and I don't know what happened, but I usually set them up high, so I use a stick to get up there, and I was like 8 or 10 feet up in the tree and kind of leaned out around the corner a little bit, setting that cell camera up, and the stick kicked for some reason, and I went 10 feet off that stick onto the ground, and I have my left knee's been rough from racing, and I popped it when I hit the ground, and I seriously thought that I was going to have to grab my inReach and call for help to get out of there, and I'm like, dog pounced on me. He's like, what the heck's going on? Like tackled me. I'm like, get the heck off me.
Yeah.
And I stood up and I put weight on it and I'm like, all right, it really hurts like it has in the past when I hyperextend it like that. And I'm like, I can walk. So I continued. I hung that camera, hung the stand next to me, went down over the mountain to the bottom, hung the stand down there, and I'm like, I'm done. Can't do any more. So I ended up having to go back, and I think it was the first week of Labor Day in September. I went back, set that stand up at the top of the mountain.
That's the way to do it, though. Then I just carry in the bottom stick or 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all, intel.
Yep.
Years of intel and stuff to be able to do that. It's pretty tough to do that, picking a new mountain and saying I'm going to go bring a stand in here for a rut hunt, and when it's September.
Yeah.
You can do like what you did with, setting up that stand after you scout, in season scouting.
Yeah.
But to try and do that early seasons, spring, summer, you really got to have a little bit of knowledge of the area and how the deer use it and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's key to sitting all day, having that stand there, having the confidence in it.
Yep. Well, we're almost an hour 40 in. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
I don't know. We covered quite a bit.
Yeah, there really wasn't much story on that New Hampshire deer. That was a lot of luck.
That's a cool looking rack, though.
Yeah, he's a hell of a buck.
Bladed G2s and.
Yeah, I mean he's my highest scoring buck. He's my heaviest weight buck. just had him officially scored, you know, so he was 144 and change, 145.
Yeah.
As an 8-pointer, which is pretty impressive. I had my buddy James Smith Jr. score him, so he's going to go into the New Hampshire Skull and Antler Trophy Club and NBBC and all that stuff, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that deer was, I'd had a couple years of history with him, but it wasn't like I was really after him, targeting him. It was an area that I hunted for the last 15 or 20 years, kind of like one of those old faithful areas you always kind of go to. And, I had one camera in there, and it was basically to see what there was for bucks, in there. And he was always showing up around, beginning of October and whatnot. And it was actually, going back and looking at all my trail camera pictures of him when he would show up, it was within 3 or 4 days of when I actually killed him. That every year he would come through this area, and I'd get him on that certain scrape. And I didn't really have it into my head that I was going to go and kill this deer that night. All these people talk about going in and surgically removing a deer and stuff. It was the complete opposite with that deer. I told a couple of close buddies that we had a group text going. I'm like, I spent all morning long scouting big woods, moving cameras, moving stands, and I was running late. And I told them, I'm like, I'm just going to go, this stand I, usually set up prior to the season. It's a good doe spot. I've killed a half a dozen deer over the years there and seen a lot of good bucks there and, killed a couple decent bucks. And I told them, I'm like, it's been a rough season. It's October 9th. I'm like, I'm just going to go in and kill a doe. And walked in there at 3:30, almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon, pretty late. And, prior to that, years past, I probably would have just stayed home. I changed my mindset these last couple of years. And it's like every chance I get, you need to be out in the woods. And that's what killed that deer, is just being determined to be in the woods. I went in there, climbed the stand, never saw anything the whole night. And just before dark, I remember it getting super dark and thinking, geez, I must only have a couple minutes left. Look at my clock on my watch, and it's like, 6:15. So it was 6:45 was the end of legal. And I'm like, wow, I got a half an hour left. Okay. It's super dark. I'm not shooting past 25, 30 yards, at this point. Overcast, kind of storm rolling in. And I hear something in front of me, thinking it's a doe, and I've got my binoculars up looking, can't see anything. And I hear a big loud snap behind me, and it's a steep bank behind me, and they kind of funnel up this bank out of a little swamp and then hit this transition of an oak bench and hemlock, and it's all mixed hemlock oak. And I could hear 2 deer coming up over the bank, and they were going to pop out right over my right shoulder behind me at under 10 yards. And I remember just not being rushed at all, like not thinking I was going to see a buck, probably a doe and a skipper, whatever, it's so late at this point. I'll probably just watch them and let them walk by. And I remember him stopping, seeing a big body deer. And I swing my binoculars and I look, and I'm having a hard time trying to find his antlers, and he's dark racked. He's covered in hemlock. And I finally get his neck come up, and I just remember seeing those sweeping beams, and I'm like, oh crap. Literally drop my binoculars to my chest.
Yeah.
Can't believe it didn't hit something and make a noise. Reach over, grab my bow, and before I could even grab my bow, I could hear him walking again, and he stepped into a little opening, and I'm thinking he's going to walk up past me. 10-yard shot, beautiful broadside. And I hook my release on, I look down, and he's gone. He's not in that opening I expected him to step in. And I look right straight down, and he's at the base of my tree getting ready to touch his nose on my stick. And I'm like, it was like just like things are going to happen really fast, really quickly.
He's going to explode here in a second.
Yeah. And as soon as his nose touched that stick, he did that like he got the crap scared out of him, duck.
Yeah.
He dropped down, and as soon as he did, I was like, he's either going to, bolt and run, or he's going to jump back. And pretty much as he dropped down, I started the draw, and he had jumped at that point, landed one jump away, 4 yards from the base of my tree, quartered almost straight away from me, and I was already at full draw by the time he hit the ground. And I just remember, like, don't rush the shot. If he's going to run, he's going to run, but don't mess this up. And when his nose touched that tree, I could see the sweeping beam. I mean, I'm in a big oak, and his rack was like the width of that tree. And I'm like, thinking it's a big buck, but it didn't really quite register. And I just settled on him. I remember kind of looking past my peep to make sure that I knew there was some limbs there. I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't, limb wasn't blocking his vital. I came back on him, hung real low, and just pulled through. Like, everything was perfect. Like you're shooting in your backyard, perfect. And, good sound, good pop. He went off crashing. He stopped like 40 yards. And I'm thinking, okay, crash, nothing. And I could hear walking. And I'm like, well, did he lay down? Did I miss him? What happened? Of course, there was another deer behind him too. So that was kind of messing.
That deer walking?
Yeah, that was kind of messing me up a little bit. And they walk away. I sit in the tree for 20 minutes or so waiting for noise to dissipate. I get down, could see the knot glowing in the ground. And the arrow's covered in good blood. First 2 bounds, just, blood splatter everywhere. So I'm like, okay, I definitely hit him good. Threw the arrow in the quiver, went back to truck, went and met up with Armin, and we're looking at it, and we're like, yeah, it looks pretty good. Let's go in. I wanted to at least advance to where I heard him stop and just, kind of see, because it was close, but it was a tough shot. I'd rather take a 30-yard broadside shot than what I had to take. And we went back in, started following him, and I just remember, like, going down through following this blood trail, and he jumped. Those first 10 jumps were good splattered blood. Then he stops, and I mean, there was just a puddle of blood there. And he literally walked down it was all downhill. If it was uphill, he probably would have just laid right down there and died 40 yards.
Yep.
It was steep downhill. He walked down his trail. He went up because he bled through 2 scrapes that he made within 10 feet of each other. And it was like someone just dumped a red paint can down through the woods. Just absolute, just
Well, you had a good low exit, too, like in the front of his brisket there. So walking downhill, you get good blood.
Oh, it was nuts. I mean, perfect, right behind the shoulder. He was quartered so hard, it actually, like you said, it came out between his legs, right up on the top of his brisket. Took the whole aortic arch out, everything. Missed the heart, just the top side of his heart, but the whole, aorta was
all the good
gone.
Stuff. Yeah.
There wasn't an ounce of blood in him. I mean, he just left everything right there on the ground. He was like 40 yards from where I'd heard him stop.
Yep.
He spun around, literally probably just laid down right there.
Yep.
And I remember going down through the woods and still not sure what this deer was, and knew it was a good buck. And Armin kept asking me, he's like, what was it? I'm like, it was a good buck. And I get down, I shine the light up, and I'm like, Armin, he's right there. And he's like, what is he? I'm like, dude, he's huge. And he's like, come on. Steps up, and we, walk up to him, and it was just like seeing that rack. His body, 217 pounds.
Yeah, he was dandy.
And I was just like, I remember him saying to me, and I'm glad he was there because he's been a, huge inspiration to me. Got me into, killing big bucks and stuff. Best friend. I can't thank him enough. And I remember him saying, he's like, buddy, what did you just shoot? I'm like, I told you he was big.
No, that's cool, man.
But yeah, so I mean, that was awesome. Just a lot of luck involved, but I was out there, so that's what mattered.
Yeah, and opportunity meets preparation.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about, man. There was a reason you were there. Just need the deer to mess up.
Yeah, so it was a good year. It's, like you said, it was kind of an odd year with rut and stuff.
It was a funky rut.
Yeah. So
I thought it was anyway.
But I can't complain at all. It's definitely quality over quantity.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll wrap this one up. Thanks for coming on, fellas.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, man.
Can't be in the woods, so might as well be doing this.
Absolutely. If I'm not in the woods, I'm usually talking about deer. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to check a couple cameras today, and I brought my drone with me. I might fly it over the pond down there and
Yep.
get some footage, but I don't know.
Now it's time to start coyote hunting.
Yep.
I don't know. Might go out to Ohio for the muzzleloader season. We're still going back and forth.
Yep. January.
Yeah, January season. Go out and hunt some state ground. I don't know.
Yeah, I got, I think, 2 days left here down in Mass. We'll have the holiday off for the Friday before Christmas and then the Friday before New Year's. So
yep.
See if we can make something happen for the 2 days left. And like you said, coyote hunting and starts all over.
Yeah, it does. I can't wait. I found that I killed that small buck yesterday in Mass, but dragging him out, I found a hammer of a 4-point shed. So like that's all I can think about right now. It's like the snow needs to melt so I can get back in there and find that other shed. So I love shed hunting, so that'll be fun. There's a lot of bucks to find sheds from. There's a pile of bucks around. So
I'll give you my dog so you can get him some action because he probably won't get it with me.
Well, we should bring him in there because there's a pile of deer in there. It's just they just start stacking in there to winter, So
yeah, I'm hoping he'll work out. I worked with him a lot this year, so he was a little bit too young last spring to really get him, out into those mountains with that kind of hiking. But he loves antlers. So, and he's been finding them around the house. I'll throw him out, leave him out there for a couple weeks where you can't really find him, and then kind of browse him through the area, and he picks up on them.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. It's just tough around here,
Oh, absolutely.
You don't find a ton of them, so you got to really.
They don't get the practice.
Yeah, most of these guys that run dogs, they're more into moose and stuff than they are deer, and which really kind of helps, keeps the dog real sharp and and trained on it. So, but I just he's a hunting partner, basically a scouting partner.
Yep.
Being out in the woods.
All right, boys. Good talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure and come back and join us every other Monday with a brand new episode. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure and leave a review. And you can find me on YouTube at Northeast Hunt and Film. Once again, thanks for listening.